I had been married to Nathan Steele, a powerful figure in the elite financial world, for 2 years. Aside from the 3 routine nights a week, he had always been distant toward me. Then, news broke that Nathan Steele had wiped away my sister's tears and took a private jet to chase after the woman he loved. It dominated the trending searches. Heartbroken, I left without a word, pregnant with his child, and disappeared. 2 years later, Nathan Steele and his bodyguards blocked me at the entrance of my apartment. I froze for a moment. Before he could speak, I shoved the baby girl in my arms into his brother-in-law's hands. "You're just in time. Help me watch her for a bit. My boyfriend is taking me out to dinner." Nathan Steele held the baby in one hand and pinned me against the door with the other. He tilted his head slightly toward his brother-in-law and smirked. "You're really something." "Huh. My daughter, Emma Zhao," widened her eyes in curiosity. "Ew," was so shocked that my eyes went round. Nathan Steele glanced at his daughter, then leaned in close to me, his voice dropping into a low whisper. "You really need to be taught a lesson. Jessica Zhao." The office was bustling with excitement that afternoon. One of my female colleagues had just gotten engaged, and her fiancé had given her a diamond ring the size of a baccarat crystal. All the female teachers crowded around, marveling at it with admiration. After offering my polite congratulations, I returned to my desk and continued working on my lesson plans. That colleague had always been passive-aggressive toward me. Now, she seized the chance to take a jab. "Jessica, your Bulgari wedding ring is quite nice too." "Thanks. It's just a simple, basic design. No diamonds, but it's still a luxury brand, I suppose." "Well, your husband isn't too bad, then." I smiled but didn't reply. "We've worked together for so long, and we still don't know what your husband even looks like." "That's right. Jessica, when will you bring him out for us to meet?" "He's busy with work. Not really into socializing." My colleague scoffed. "Oh, come on. How busy could he possibly be? Busier than the mayor." "Yeah, surely he has time for a meal at least. Or maybe he just doesn't care about you that much." I shook my head helplessly. "He's genuinely busy." Another voice chimed in mockingly. "Or maybe she just doesn't want us to see him." Hilarious. "Do you think everyone is dying to steal your contract-bound husband?" I stood up and calmly looked at the woman in front of me. "My husband is picking me up after work. If you want to see him, you're welcome to join." When Nathan Steele's globally limited edition Cullinan pulled up at the school gate, the entire campus erupted in whispers. Then, when a man dressed in a custom-tailored business suit, strikingly handsome, stepped out of the car, every female colleague fell into stunned silence. I gripped my handbag tightly, lifted my chin, and walked toward him with a smile. Nathan Steele looked slightly surprised, his brow lifting, but he still stepped forward, took my bag, and naturally wrapped an arm around my waist. Hearing the commotion, the school principal and senior staff rushed over, each of them deferential and overly eager. After all, both the school's administrative building and its library had been funded by the Steele family. After a few polite exchanges, Nathan Steele led me to the car. Before getting in, I glanced back at that female colleague. She was biting her lip, her face pale. At some point, she had even taken off her engagement ring. I withdrew my gaze and gently held Nathan Steele's hand. "Honey, thank you for picking me up today." He didn't respond, just pulled me into his chest and lightly pinched my earlobe. "Then you'd better behave well tonight." Only then did I remember. It was the scheduled night again. At 10 p.m., after finishing his work in the study, Nathan Steele pushed open the bedroom door. I was applying essential oils when I lifted my head and saw his tall, commanding figure reflected in the mirror. He had just finished a video conference. His face carried a faint trace of exhaustion, and the bridge of his nose still bore slight marks from his glasses. Nathan Steele glanced at me, then effortlessly tugged his shirt free from his trousers. In a flash, his broad shoulders came into view. I saw the neatly defined abs lining his lean waist and stomach, and I couldn't help but feel the back of my neck heat up. It was hard to imagine that with how busy he was, Nathan Steele still managed to carve out time to maintain such a perfect physique. If it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have been so easily seduced by his looks, getting so lost in him that I married him right after graduation. Setting down the essential oil and wiping my hands, I got up and walked over to him. "Let me do it." Nathan Steele paused his movements. I stood on my tiptoes, carefully unbuttoning his shirt, but before I could undo them all, he suddenly lifted me and placed me on the windowsill. He lowered his head and gently bit my earlobe. "Why do you smell so good?" "I just used the new skincare oil I bought." Nathan let out a low chuckle. His long, strong fingers gripped my waist, his fingertips pressing against the soft flesh there. Then, with a firm tug, he pulled me into his embrace. I could clearly feel his change, and my eyes instinctively lowered in embarrassment. "Honey," I murmured, resting my head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Nathan was already pressing down, his lips capturing mine. I had originally wanted to ask him whether the rumors about a rich and beautiful intern at his company pursuing him were true. After all, even my best friend had heard about it. But Nathan knew my body too well. Under his touch, my thoughts became a blur. My mind emptied completely. Bottles and jars on the vanity table tipped over in disarray. Nathan gripped my chin, turning my face toward the mirror. In the reflection, I saw my own flushed complexion. My round almond eyes misted with heat, shimmering like embers in a soft blaze. "Jessica." Nathan's voice was hoarse. I looked up at him, my lips slightly parted. His eyes had faint traces of red from exhaustion. After working overtime for several days straight, his body and mind had been pushed to the limit. Maybe for Nathan, our 3 scheduled nights a week were his best way to relieve stress. But for me, they were the moments I felt closest to him. Strange, sour ache welled up in my chest. I swallowed it down and lowered my head, pressing a gentle kiss against his lips. Nathan seemed momentarily surprised. It was rare for me to take the initiative, but after locking eyes with me for a brief second, he suddenly became rougher, more aggressive. By the end, I could barely take it anymore, my eyes welling up with tears. Only then did Nathan lift me in his arms and carry me to the bathroom. I was already drifting off to sleep when Nathan pulled me into his arms. "Zoe Reed has been fired," he said. "It was all one-sided on her part. I had nothing to do with her." I was too drowsy to open my eyes. I just nodded vaguely and murmured, "Sleep now." Nathan kissed my forehead. After our scheduled night on Friday, Nathan left for a business trip to Hong Kong. By Tuesday, I still hadn't heard a word from him. After class, I sat in the office, sipping tea while organizing my lesson plans. At the desk beside me, my colleague was scrolling through Weibo. Suddenly, she let out a gasp. "Oh my God, this is straight out of a novel. The entertainment industry's most beautiful sweetheart has nothing on this face. A private jet to chase after his true love? What kind of billionaire is spoiling his delicate little wife like this? But the most important thing is these hands. How can a man's hands look this good while wiping away someone's tears? Jessica, come look. Doesn't this remind you of your husband, Mr. Steele?" She turned her phone toward me. At first glance, I immediately recognized the pair of hands in the photo, slender and elegant, with well-defined knuckles. His nails were trimmed perfectly clean. On the ring finger of his left hand was a Bulgari wedding band, the exact match to the one I was wearing. Instinctively, I curled my fingers inward, clenching them into a fist. Those hands had touched me countless times. I had even secretly traced their shape while he was asleep. I knew them better than I knew myself. Even Nathan probably didn't realize that on his left hand, near the base of his ring finger, there was a tiny brown mole. I had kissed it in secret before. As I stared at the photo, my tears suddenly began to fall. Nathan Steele was wiping another woman's tears. And that woman was my half-sister. He had never once wiped away mine. Maybe he didn't even know how many times I had cried since marrying him. Nathan's call came in just as I was sitting alone in a cafe, staring blankly into space. That photo had been the final trigger. Ever since I saw it, wave after wave of thoughts had flooded my mind. And then, I realized something. The world I lived in, it was nothing more than a poorly written romance novel. And I was just the disposable supporting character in it. Nathan Steele's true love had always been my sister, Gracia. The only reason he married me in the first place was because she had abruptly broken up with him and left the country. Enraged, he impulsively proposed to me. distant from my parents and my sister. I had been kept completely in the dark all along. Now, Grace was dying. Her final wish was to spend her last moments by Nathan's side. And because I stubbornly refused to divorce him, I was pressured into giving up my child. As if that weren't enough, Nathan even wanted me to donate a kidney to her to prolong her life. I had been married to him for 2 years. He had never once known that. Perhaps due to the Zhao family's genetics, my own health wasn't good either. If I lost this child, I would never be able to have another. I'll be back in Beijing the day after tomorrow. Do you want anything? Nathan's voice was as calm and indifferent as always. Clutching my phone, for the first time, I allowed myself to act a little spoiled. I want to eat Portuguese egg tarts from Macau, from the oldest bakery there. Nathan seemed to pause for a second. Okay, anything else? I want my husband to come home early. For the first time, I acted coy. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but Nathan's voice seemed a little gentler than usual. After ending the call, he instructed his assistant to reroute his trip to Macau the next day. The assistant was surprised but quickly adjusted the schedule. Nathan set his phone down on the table, lit a cigarette, and for some reason, suddenly chuckled. Even his usually cold and distant eyes seemed to hold a hint of something softer, something almost impossible to hide. On my way home, a series of photos of Grace Zhao crying quietly suddenly hit the trending searches. A top comment was pinned. I think I finally understand the power of a first love. That reply sparked heated discussions. Yeah, just a few tears. Or even just standing there silently. And she's already unbeatable. I don't even want to imagine what it'd be like if my husband had a first love like this. Even as a woman, I feel sorry for her. Seriously, what kind of man could resist this? Am I the only one who noticed? The hand wiping away her tears is gorgeous. Did you guys see the wedding ring on that hand? His wife must feel so pitiful. But honestly, losing to a woman like this doesn't feel so bad. Holy shit. It's been exposed. The private jet that picked her up. It belongs to the Steele family. Which Steele family? Which one do you think? My phone suddenly chimed with a new message. It was from my colleague, the one who had just gotten engaged. Jessica, is this your husband? I saw the wedding ring on his hand. It's the same as yours. And that private jet. Seems like it belongs to the Steele family too. And the woman, isn't she your sister? Not gonna lie, you two really do look alike. It's just that your sister gives off more of that delicate, innocent vibe. That day when your husband picked you up, we were all so envious. But looking at this now, being a rich man's wife doesn't seem so great after all. Jessica, you're really kind of pitiful. I stared at the messages without responding. She wasn't wrong. The wedding ring was Nathan's. It was the exact match to the one on my hand. The private jet was his. I had only ridden it once. He was discreet, hated ostentation, and would never use it unless absolutely necessary. And yes, the woman in the photo was indeed my half-sister. Grace had always been frail since childhood, and our family had spoiled her because of it, especially our father. Being a rich man's wife was definitely not as glamorous as people thought. But honestly, in the 2 years I had been married to Nathan Steele, my life had been relatively peaceful. Did I really deserve pity? I thought about it carefully. If I didn't foolishly yearn for my husband's love, not even a little, then no, I wasn't pitiful at all. But unfortunately, I wanted his love. The day Nathan came back, all the online discussions had completely disappeared. The trending searches had been wiped clean, as if nothing had ever happened, and he never brought it up. I pretended not to know anything. Sitting cross-legged on the sofa, I slowly ate my egg tart, savoring each bite. By the time Nathan Steele came out of the shower, I had already started on my third one. He walked over and reached for the box, but I quickly pressed down on it. Too many sweets at night will upset your stomach. Be careful, or you'll feel uncomfortable later, he said. But if I save them for tomorrow, they won't taste as good. I protested. Maybe it was the warm indoor lighting, but even his sharp features seemed softer in this moment. I'll buy you more, he said. His tone firm as he took the box away from me. Then, before I could react, he reached out and brushed the crumbs off the corner of my lips. I was still in a daze when Nathan suddenly lowered his head and kissed me. At the same time, something cool brushed against my neck. Instinctively, I reached up and touched it. A sapphire necklace. I saw it in Macau by chance. Thought it looked nice. So I bought it, he said casually. I stared at him, my emotions a tangled mess. Was this just a simple gift? Or was it his way of compensating for something? What's wrong? You don't like it? Nathan asked, lowering his head to kiss my forehead. But his lips didn't stop there. They trailed downward, leaving a burning sensation in their wake. I closed my eyes slowly. Nathan, I haven't brushed my teeth yet, I murmured. He paused slightly and then bit down gently on my lip. What did you just call me? I let out a soft whimper from the pain but still reached up, wrapping my arms around his neck. Husband. Nathan always seemed to love it when I called him that. And maybe because he had been away for several days, he wanted me even more tonight. But when his ringed hand pressed against my chest, my nose stung, and I almost burst into tears. My heart pounded, and the imprint of his wedding band left a faint mark on my skin. I didn't let him see my tears. The moment they threatened to fall, I hugged him tightly and gave in to him completely. Overwhelmed by emotion, Nathan held me even closer, as if he wanted to merge me into his very being. Jessica. He murmured my name over and over again, his voice hoarse. The next day, just before noon, I received a call from my sister, Gracia. Jessica, do you want to go out for tea? Drying my damp hair, I looked at my reflection in the vanity mirror. But in my mind, all I could see was the image of my sister's tear-streaked face from that photo. Lowering my gaze, I asked, do you need something? Grace. Jessica, I wanted to explain the rumors about me and Nathan to you personally. She said. What rumors? He hasn't told you. She sounded surprised. I'm sorry, Jessica. I didn't know he didn't tell you. Is there anything else? Jessica, are you mad at me? I heard the faint sound of her exhaling, as if she had just taken a drag from a cigarette. I didn't mean for this to happen. But Jessica, I'm dying. I really have no choice. I miss him so much. I quietly hung up the phone. I didn't know if I should feel sad or furious. I had walked blindly into this marriage, thrilled to marry the man I loved, only to find out that I was nothing more than a temporary replacement. I couldn't accept the way things had been arranged. I had been deceived from the very start, and I had done nothing wrong. I didn't want to give up my child. I didn't want to die on an operating table, only to have my organs cut out and given to someone else. So, I made a decision. By late October, Beijing had already begun to turn cold. When Nathan Steele got off the plane, he didn't head straight to the office like usual. Instead, he instructed the driver to take him home. He had been busy lately and hadn't seen Jessica Zhao for nearly half a month. The car pulled up to the villa. As Nathan stepped out, the housekeeper hurried forward to take his things, but he raised a hand to stop them. Where's my wife? The housekeeper hesitated. Mrs. Steele went to C-City for a teaching workshop organized by the school. Nathan's steps came to an abrupt halt. He slowly lifted his gaze to the darkened windows of their bedroom on the second floor. The entire estate was eerily silent. He had never realized how empty and cold the house felt without Jessica. When did she leave? He asked. 2 days ago, the housekeeper answered cautiously. Nathan said nothing else. He strode into the main house, entered his study, and took out his phone to check the weather forecast for C-City. The monsoon season was intensifying. C-City, surrounded on 3 sides by mountains, had been experiencing continuous rainfall. The news reported that landslides had already started in some areas. Nathan Steele felt a strange sense of unease, though he couldn't quite explain why. He tried calling Jessica Zhao, but her phone was unreachable. By the time he arrived in C-City, it was 4 in the morning. The rain had been falling relentlessly for 3 days and 3 nights. When the mudslide came, Jessica never made it out. Even her body had been swallowed by the collapsing mountainside and the rushing sludge. There was no way to recover it. The school principal, drenched in sweat, his legs weak with fear, dared not meet Nathan's gaze. Nathan sat on the sofa, his face unreadable, staring at the handbag in front of him. It was the only thing left of Jessica. The principal's forehead was beaded with cold sweat. Mr. Steele. Why? Why did you arrange for her to attend this event? No, it wasn't like that, Mr. Steele. The principal stammered. This time, Ms. Zhao signed up voluntarily. Nathan suddenly lifted his head, his sharp gaze locking onto the principal. She volunteered? Yes. Originally, we planned to send other teachers, since the location was quite remote and the conditions weren't great. But she insisted on going. The principal felt suffocated under Nathan's stare. The Steele family donated millions to the school every year. There was no way he would dare to make things difficult for Mrs. Steele. Nathan's expression remained fixed, unmoving. He had been careless. Looking back now, there had been many subtle differences in Jessica's behavior lately. Small things he had overlooked. He thought her sudden affection, her dependence on him, her way of clinging to him, was simply her growing into the role of his wife. He had been pleased, even indulgent, watching her soften and change, but he never thought to ask why. For the next 2 days and nights, Nathan Steele didn't sleep. Now, standing in his study, he remained expressionless as he stared down at the papers before him. Inside Jessica's handbag, among her belongings, he had found a divorce agreement. There was also a short handwritten letter. The divorce agreement had been printed, her signature already in place. But the letter, she had written that herself. Nathan, I know about you and my sister. I thought about it for a long time, and I've decided to leave you. I've prepared the divorce agreement. Once I return from Sea City, let's finalize it. Nathan's bloodshot eyes scanned the note. After 2 nights without sleep, he wasn't even sure what he was feeling anymore. He held the divorce papers in his grip for a long while before. Suddenly, he let out a low, bitter laugh. And then, in the next second, he crushed the papers into a tight ball and hurled them into the trash. My funeral was quiet, held with little fanfare. Since my body was never found, they simply erected a cenotaph in my name. Not even the most relentless paparazzi managed to snap a single photo of Nathan Steele at the funeral. Rumors spread. Some claimed that after my untimely death, the Zhao family had already begun making arrangements to marry Grace Zhao into the Steele family instead. But neither the Steele family nor Nathan himself had made any statement regarding the matter. I didn't want to see any more of it. I closed the webpage. In the original novel, the one who had died in this accident was actually another colleague of mine. He was someone I had always gotten along with, a humble teacher from an ordinary family. He had just gotten married, had a newborn daughter, and lived a quiet, happy life with his wife. In the novel, after his death, his devastated husband never remarried, spent the rest of his life searching for his lost remains, and ultimately lived in sorrow. But this time, the one who died was me, an unnecessary, obstructive character. And because of that, my colleague got to live. He would go home, be with his family, watch his daughter grow up, and live happily ever after with his wife. Oddly enough, I felt content with that. I had never been an ambitious person, always satisfied with the life I had. But this time, unknowingly, I had rewritten the fate of a good man. For the first time in my life, I felt like my existence hadn't been completely meaningless. In the original story, I was just a supporting character, one that was written out early on. I didn't know what happened in the later chapters, but maybe that was a good thing. A future full of uncertainty and endless possibilities didn't seem so bad. The following autumn, in a small southern town, I gave birth to my daughter, Emma. Throughout my pregnancy, I had been obsessed with tianyu, a type of field herb, to the point of near madness. So, I named my daughter Emma Yu, a small tribute to that strange craving. By then, I had reverted to my mother's maiden name and started a new life under a new identity. I was no longer Jessica Zhao, the second daughter of the Zhao family. When Emma turned 100 days old, I happened to catch a news article. Grace Zhao was critically ill. The hospital had already issued over a dozen emergency notices. But in the end, she was saved by Nathan Steele. He had personally flown in a team of medical experts from overseas, staying by her side through an entire night of surgery. When she was finally moved to a regular hospital room, her bedside was surrounded by family and friends. I caught a glimpse of Nathan Steele in the corner of the photo. That moment, Emma was in the hospital for neonatal pneumonia. And in the quiet of the night, the only ones by her side were me and the nanny. My sister, Grace Zhao, had been the cherished daughter of the Zhao family since birth. She had always effortlessly possessed all the most precious things in life. Even the love I had desperately longed for was something she could casually discard. But the fortunate ones in this world always remain at the center, no matter what they do. I reached out and gently stroked Emma's soft little face before turning away, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. The pain was unbearable, but I had no regrets. I couldn't imagine what my life would be like if this world didn't have Emma in it. On the anniversary of Jessica Zhao's passing, the lights in the master bedroom of the Steele estate remained on all night. The search team had spent a full year in Sea City, but Jessica's body was never found. Everyone had tried to persuade Nathan to let go, directly or indirectly, but deep down, he harbored an absurd thought. If there was no body, then maybe, just maybe, Jessica was still alive. He sat exhausted on the sofa, gripping the sapphire necklace in his hand. That night, on this very sofa, he had personally placed the necklace around her neck. He had been so pleased back then, thinking she was finally behaving like a proper little wife, acting spoiled and affectionate with him. But she must have already heard the rumors by then, even though he had shut down the trending searches immediately and wiped every news article off the internet. No secret could be kept forever. For some reason, the memory of that night replayed in his mind, frame by frame. The way she suddenly reached for him, suddenly clung to him. The way her voice trembled when she called him husband again and again. Had it truly been passion? Or had she been secretly crying while he held her? Nathan slowly opened his palm, letting the sapphire glisten under the light. But no matter how brilliant it was, it could never outshine the way she had once shone in his arms. Leaning back into the sofa, he closed his eyes. In the harsh brightness of the room, no one saw the lone tear that slipped down his cheek, vanishing silently into his dark hair. Nathan stood up, carefully placing the necklace back in its box. Then, lifting his gaze, his eyes fell upon the wedding photo on the wall. In the picture, Jessica Zhao smiled softly, a mix of shyness and warmth. And in his eyes, as he looked at her, there was love, deep, undeniable love, no matter how much he had tried to hide it. Taking out his phone, Nathan made a call. Pull back the search team from Sea City. You're stopping the search? Yes, but start looking for her in every city. If she's not in the country, then search overseas. Understood, Mr. Steele. Where should we start? Nathan was silent for a moment before finally naming a small town. It was the place Jessica had once mentioned. The town where her birth mother had been born. The place where her mother was buried. By then, I had already left the city where my mother was born and raised. When I received a call from an old neighbor, I was caught off guard, though my emotions quickly settled. It wasn't surprising. The way I had died had been far from foolproof. Nathan was bound to figure it out sooner or later. But what worried me more now was whether, no matter how much I struggled, I was destined to fall back into the same story. Was Nathan searching for me just to take my kidney? After all, Grace's condition remained critical. She wouldn't always be lucky enough to be saved. I was her biological sister. Our compatibility rate was likely high. And in the original story, this was exactly how it was written. After my death, Nathan transplanted my kidney into Grace. Then, they lived happily ever after. No one ever mourned for the disposable supporting character who was sacrificed for their happy ending. So how was I supposed to escape this fate? Not long after Emma's first birthday, I was about to leave for an errand when she clung to me like a baby koala, refusing to let go. No matter how much the nanny coaxed her, she wouldn't budge. And then, Nathan Steele appeared outside my apartment with a dozen bodyguards. I froze. So did Emma, who was still in my arms. Nathan's gaze first landed on me. Then, slowly, his eyes lowered to Emma. Before he could say a word, I scooped Emma up and thrust her into his arms. You're just in time. Brother-in-law, help me watch her for a bit. My boyfriend is taking me out to dinner. The first meeting between a father and daughter was hardly ever sentimental. People always said fatherly love had to be nurtured. Maybe, if Emma spent more time with him, he'd grow to love her. And maybe, just maybe, he'd learn to love me, too. After all, no one wanted to die. No one wanted to lose a kidney for nothing. I had no intention of playing the fool, but I also knew my place. So before anything else, I needed to set clear boundaries and make my stance known. I would never interfere in whatever was going on between him and Grace, and in return, I hoped he would do me the favor of keeping his distance as well. Nathan Steele seemed so amused by my words that he actually let out a laugh. Then, holding our daughter in one arm, he pressed me against the door with the other. "Brother-in-law, you sure know how to play, don't you?" Emma blinked her big round eyes, staring curiously at him, while I was so shocked that my own eyes widened in panic. The nanny, who had initially reached for her phone to call the police, was stopped by Nathan's bodyguards. They were polite, but firm, ushering her out of the room. As the door closed behind them, I overheard one of them say, "That's our madam. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to her." I froze. That one word, madam, made my mind go completely blank. Nathan let out a cold chuckle and lowered his gaze to Emma, who was dangling like a little rag doll in his grip. Yet, for a brief moment, there seemed to be a rare hint of warmth in his expression. "You stay here for now," he said. Then, as if she had understood his command, Nathan placed Emma inside the playpen on top of the soft playmat. Normally, she would never tolerate being left in there if I was home. If I so much as tried, she would cling to me like her life depended on it. But now, Nathan placed her down, and she obediently sat there without a fuss. That little traitor. After settling Emma, Nathan turned back to me, perhaps aware that our daughter was listening. He glanced at her once more before stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Jessica Zhao, you really do need to be taught a lesson." His words were harsh, but in the very next moment, his eyes turned red. Then, suddenly, he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly it was as if he feared I would disappear. My entire body stiffened. Nathan buried his face in the crook of my neck, his warm breath brushing against my skin. Then, something wet, something warm, fell onto my shoulder. I almost gasped, my breath hitching. Was he crying? I wanted to push him away, to look at his face, to confirm it, but he refused to let go. It was a long time before he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Pack your things. We're going back to Beijing." "Back to Beijing? For what?" Nathan pulled away slightly, his dark eyes locking onto mine. "What do you think? You've been running with my daughter for long enough. I've already repaid her enough." My voice was firm. "The kidney transplant. There was already a match found. I have nothing to do with her anymore." His emotions had settled, his expression returning to the cold, unreadable mask he always wore. Aside from the faint redness in his eyes, there was no trace of his earlier vulnerability. For a second, I almost wondered if I had imagined it. "Repaid," I repeated, the word standing out to me. Nathan met my gaze. "Yes, you owed her a debt." I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" Nathan reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his touch unnervingly natural. Then, he took my hand. "When she was a child, she saved my life." I froze. Nathan continued, his tone casual, but firm. "I was badly injured and almost died in the wilderness. She was the one who called for help. She also stopped my bleeding and bandaged my wounds before the ambulance arrived. I would have died if it weren't for her. I promised myself I would repay that debt, no matter what." "Wait," I suddenly interrupted. "You're saying she saved you when she was a kid?" Nathan frowned slightly. "Yes. Has she told you about it before?" I stared at her, my emotions a tangled mess. "Because, Nathan," I swallowed, a bitter smile forming on my lips. "That was me." He froze. I let out a shaky laugh, but for some reason, tears spilled down my cheeks. "It was me, Nathan, not her. When we were kids, I told my sister about it. I told her that I had found a wounded boy in the mountains, that I helped him and called for help, but she warned me never to tell anyone. She said you must have been escaping from something dangerous, and if I spoke up, I would get myself into trouble." I was young. I believed her, so I never mentioned it again. Nathan's expression changed. A storm of emotions flickered across his face. Shock, realization, guilt, Until, in the end, all that remained was pain. He reached out, wanting to hold me again, but I took a step back. Nathan, tell me the truth. My voice trembled. Did you marry me because you felt like you owed me? Or was it always her? Did you love her? Did you choose her? If you loved her so much, then why did you force yourself to marry me? You wiped away her tears. You used your private jet to bring her back. When the news broke, did you ever stop to think about how I felt? Nathan's jaw clenched. I never wiped her tears. I laughed, though it held no warmth. There are photos. Nathan, the private jet wasn't for her, he said, his voice unwavering. Your father called me, begging me to bring her back. He said she was dying. I owed him a life debt, so I arranged it. But the photos were taken out of context. He cut in. If you don't believe me, there's a full video. Watch it yourself. I looked at him, my chest rising and falling rapidly. You always have an explanation for everything, don't you? Nathan held my gaze, his voice low and steady. Jessica, I only have one thing to say. I'm not the type to treat feelings like a game. If I had loved your sister, I never would have married you, because I would never take a woman I didn't love as my wife. There were no buts. I wanted to tell Nathan Steele. That wasn't how the story was written. That wasn't how our ending was supposed to be. But saying it out loud felt ridiculous, like some absurd fantasy. And the truth was, even I no longer knew where this new storyline was heading. Emma was utterly fascinated by Nathan. For the past 2 days, she had barely clung to me at all, choosing instead to follow Nathan wherever he went. Like a tiny, devoted shadow, he was far stronger than me. He could lift her high into the air with just one hand, something she had never experienced before. The two of them got along frighteningly well. My little traitor had almost completely forgotten about me. As the day of our return to Beijing approached, I felt increasingly restless for no apparent reason. That night, after Nathan put Emma to sleep, he knocked on my bedroom door. Even after 2 years of marriage, he still seemed restrained around me. Nathan let out a soft chuckle. Don't be afraid. I won't touch you. Then why are you here? He loosened the collar of his shirt slightly, his voice unusually soft. I missed you. I just wanted to spend a little more time with you. I knew I was pathetic, but how many people in this world could truly resist when the person they loved said they missed them? Nathan. He reached out and pulled me into his arms. Was it hard being pregnant? He asked. It wasn't too bad. Emma was well behaved. I didn't have too many symptoms, but I craved grapefruit constantly. I said with a faint smile. And labor? I hesitated before answering. It was difficult. Grace Zhao had always been in poor health, and I was no stronger than the average person either. But thankfully, I had made it through. I wanted to have a natural birth, but there were complications. They had to do an emergency C-section before the anesthesia fully took effect. I admitted. Even now, recalling the pain brought tears to my eyes. Childbirth was like walking through the gates of death. Only a mother could truly understand that kind of pain and fear. And at the time, I had been alone. Nathan cupped my face. His gaze filled with something indescribable as he gently wiped away my tears. But there were too many. No matter how much he wiped, they wouldn't stop. I'm sorry, he murmured. I failed you. I wasn't a good husband. His voice trembled, thick with emotion, and before I could respond, he lowered his head and kissed me. Why did you keep searching for me? I choked out. I was already dead. Why couldn't you just let it go? Nathan's grip on me tightened. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to survive a single day. When I didn't find you in Sea City, I kept thinking, maybe you were still alive. Maybe you were somewhere out there. His voice was hoarse. How could a husband ever abandon his wife, even if you really had died? I needed to find you. I needed to make sure you were laid to rest properly. Then why? My voice shook. Why didn't you tell me you didn't love my sister? If you had told me, I wouldn't have left for 2 years. I wouldn't have had to raise Emma alone. When you brought in foreign specialists to save Grace, when you pulled her back from death, I was sitting in a hospital room by myself, taking care of our daughter. Do you have any idea how much that hurt me? All the pain, the resentment, The suppressed agony that had been buried deep inside me for so long finally erupted. I broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably, my entire body trembling. Nathan held me tightly, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. His eyes were red with suppressed emotion. "Jessica." His voice was hoarse. I wiped my tears, looking at him through blurry eyes. "Do you know?" I whispered. "In another world, my sister was your true love. She was the heroine. And I was just a disposable supporting character. I was the one whose child you took away. I was the one whose kidney you cut out to save the woman you truly loved. That was my fate. So when I saw you kiss her, when I saw those photos of you two together, do you have any idea how terrified I was?" Nathan shook his head. His voice was firm. "Jessica, how could I ever do that to you? I married you because I love you. How could I ever hurt the woman I love? I don't know what other world you're talking about, but even if it truly existed, even if there was another version of me, I would never hurt my wife." His arms tightened around me. "Besides, Jessica," his voice was gentle, filled with unwavering certainty, "do you really think a man like that deserves to be the hero of any story? I only have you." Not long after we returned to Beijing, Grace Zhao's surgery failed. She didn't have much time left. When I went to visit her at the hospital, Nathan left us alone in the room. She looked like a withered flower, barely holding on. As I gazed at her, all the resentment I had once harbored for her suddenly faded away. She stared at me for a long time. Her once bright eyes had turned dull and murky, filled with unshed tears. "Jessica," she whispered. "At this moment, I finally have to accept a truth. If something was never meant to be yours, no matter how hard you try to take it, it will never belong to you." I thought that saving his life, that growing up together as childhood sweethearts, would mean that I had a place in his heart. But in the end, he still fell in love with you. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Sister, I really envy you." But she would never understand. My entire youth had been overshadowed by her brilliance. Once upon a time, I had envied her too. Why was it that people never learned to cherish what they already had? In the end, all the things they fought for so desperately became nothing but fleeting dreams. The day after I left the hospital, Grace Zhao passed away. The Zhao family was devastated, wailing in grief. But as I watched them, I no longer cared to wonder whether they had grieved the same way when I died in the mudslide. None of it mattered anymore. I had more important things in my life now. Nathan came to pick me up from the hospital. Emma sat in his arms like a delicate little doll. When she saw me, she happily waved her chubby little hands, reaching out to be held. Nathan carried her over, and as soon as he got close, Emma flung herself into my arms. I kissed her soft cheeks. "Let's go home." But halfway through the drive, Nathan suddenly instructed the driver to change routes. "Emma will stay at the family estate tonight," he said. He held our daughter in one arm, but his other hand was firmly clasped around mine. "Mom and Dad miss her." I looked straight ahead, but I couldn't help the small chuckle that escaped my lips. "Are you sure it's them who miss her? Or do you have an ulterior motive?" Nathan remained serious as he held Emma close. Then, leaning slightly toward my ear, he whispered, "Mrs. Steele, since when did you become so naughty?" I shot him a glare. He let out a low chuckle, tightening his grip around my fingers. In the end, Emma stayed at the family estate for 3 nights in a row. Nathan, meanwhile, had somehow mastered the art of seduction to an almost criminal degree. During one of our heated moments, as I gasped out "husband" over and over again, he suddenly grabbed my waist, pressing me down against the bed. "What's wrong?" he teased. "Not calling me brother-in-law anymore? I thought you liked playing that game." I glared at him, but this time, my glare was tinged with something softer, something warmer. His tie was the first to be tossed aside. Then, as he undid his belt and let it fall to the floor, I finally admitted defeat. I turned my face away and closed my eyes. "Jessica." Nathan lowered his head, pressing tender kisses along my skin, trailing down, lower and lower, until finally, his lips landed on the scar from my C-section. A C-section wasn't just a simple incision. It was 7 layers deep. A woman who had endured that pain to bring a child into the world deserved to be loved with a man's entire life. Nathan pressed a reverent kiss to the scar. "I've already scheduled the surgery," he murmured. I stiffened. "We won't have any more children. Jessica." I opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, he cut me off. "You don't have to worry about the Steele family's legacy. I'll take care of everything." His voice was steady, unwavering. "Besides, why can't a daughter inherit the family business?" At the time, I had laughed it off as nothing more than a joke. I never imagined that years later, our daughter would actually prove him right. The Hawaiian sun was perfect that day. Nathan and I were lounging under the warm rays, enjoying a quiet, blissful afternoon, when my phone rang. On the screen, Emma's name flashed. When I picked up, I was greeted by the sight of my daughter, now a poised and elegant woman dressed in a sharp business suit, her makeup flawless, exuding an aura of quiet power. And yet, the first thing she did was pout at me. "Mom, Dad, you're so mean," she whined. "You two are off on a vacation, enjoying yourselves, while you dump the whole corporation on me. I've been working non-stop for 2 weeks." I raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong? Did your boyfriend get mad at you?" Emma's expression shifted immediately. A smug, almost gloating look crossed her face. "Humph, as if he'd dare." Nathan smirked. "Oh, why wouldn't he dare? He's the young master of the Zhou family from Hong Kong, isn't he?" Emma lifted her chin. "And I'm still the princess of the Steele Empire. If anything, he's the one marrying up." I laughed. "Don't bully him too much." She grinned. Got it. Got it." After we ended the call, I turned to Nathan. "So, are we really not letting our daughter marry outside the family?" Nathan leaned back lazily. "Do you think the Zhou family would even dare to refuse?" I sighed. "Fine. Whatever happens, happens. It's their business, not ours." He reached out and pulled me into his arms. "You should have focused on me a long time ago," he murmured. "You're so shameless," I muttered, but I couldn't stop the soft laugh that escaped me as I melted into his embrace. This time, I would be the one to write the ending of my own story, and I didn't think there could be a happier ending than this.